Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
I'm back, so deal with it. Let's do this!
Finally, The Rock has come back!
Live TV is awesome.
The spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to WrestleRant Radio. I am Graham Juice Matthews for June 16th, 2015, and what a whirlwind of a week it has been in the world of professional wrestling in the last 4 or 5 days alone. A great Money in the Bank pay-per-view on Sunday night, a great episode of Monday Night Raw just last night, and then last Thursday, the very unfortunate and abrupt passing of WWE Hall of Famer, professional wrestling legend, Dusty Rhodes. You know, I read that and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, to lose someone like a Vern Gagne or someone that we haven't seen in a long time, a legend in the business is one thing. It always sucks to see someone pass away, for them to live a full life and whatnot. But Dusty Rhodes, I mean, he was not young. He was 69 years old, but he still had many years left in him. And for a guy that we see almost all the time, he's one of the creative geniuses behind NXT, a former NXT general manager. We would see him in all these documentaries. I believe he was featured quite heavily in the ESPN E60 special on NXT from a few weeks ago. So, read that last Thursday, could not have been more shocked or saddened when I read that. And WWE properly paying tribute to the American Dream last Sunday at Money in the Bank, on Monday Night Raw just last night, as we will, right here on WrestleRant Radio today. I'll be bringing in John, who I called and broke the news to, because I know he was, he's a lot more into the old school stuff than I am, so I'm sure it hit him even harder home than it did to me. He took a picture with him at a Northeast Wrestling event that we met him at just 5 years ago. I was able to meet him as well, but he was able to take a picture with him, so we'll be having him on the phone to discuss Dusty Rhodes, the legacy he left behind and whatnot, to pay tribute to the American Dream in just a little bit. But also on today's show, we're reviewing Money in the Bank from this past Sunday night, bringing on for the first time ever Bleacher Report featured columnist Ryan Dilbert. We're going to be bringing him on for the first time ever, as I mentioned, to break down every match and segment from the Money in the Bank special from Sunday, and maybe give a few brief Raw thoughts as well. But of course, folks, as I mentioned before, we're kicking off the show here today with a tribute to the American Dream.
Graham, what's going on?
John, how's it going, my man?
Good.
Before we get down to business here, what were your quick thoughts on Money in the Bank from this past week?
All right. Well, I mean, you and I talked a lot about the pay-per-views, the special events that WWE has been putting on, and I'd like to say that Money in the Bank kind of followed the great shows that WWE has been putting on, but I'd have to say that of all the pay-per-views we've got in 2015, Money in the Bank had to be the weakest. I'm not saying this bad. I'm saying that when you look at Payback, when you look at WrestleMania, when you look at Elimination Chamber, I think that Money in the Bank was the weakest, but still a solid show.
I can feel that. I don't know if I would call it the weakest, but it's definitely not as high as Elimination Chamber or WrestleMania is in a stratosphere of its own. But I could feel you there, but it was still a good show. I will say that much. But that show, of course, kicking off with the tribute to the one and only Dusty Rhodes. Now, I know you were much more into the old school stuff than I was, watching Legends of Wrestling, watching the old content. So I wanted to get your thoughts. I was the one that broke the news to you of the passing of Dusty Rhodes from last week. What was going through your head?
I mean, like you said, you're the one who broke the news to me. I was at work, and Dusty had passed. I didn't have words at the time. I mean, Dusty's was one of those guys that you think they're going to be around forever. Like, you sometimes take him for granted. You see him on WWE television, or maybe if he's on like a episode of Countdown or WWE Network, you just think, oh, there's Dusty. You're happy to see him, but you might take him for granted. I think that's why it was especially shocking when to everyone really when he passed, because he meant so much to us. We never thought that this would actually happen, and it did. And it really sobered up a lot of people when it happened, especially me. But very, very sad news. I mean, this not only just affected say WWE management. This affects all of pro wrestling. I mean, people from every genre, every company, every wrestling promotion, they're all distracted about it. And I read a great quote. If Dusty Rhodes isn't the reason why you're watching wrestling, he's the reason your favorite superstar is in wrestling. I mean, he's affected so many people. When you see Dixie Carter and among others tweeting about Dusty Rhodes, you know his reach was big. He had a big impact on a lot of people.
Easily one of the greatest icons in professional wrestling history. You know, as you said, from his work in WWE and beyond and all the territories, it will live on forever. But from your personal experience, and of course, we didn't live on during when he was at his prime in the 70s, 80s. We weren't even born yet. But in watching old content, even something on Legends of Wrestling, because I know only days before he passed, when you were over my place, we were watching some Legends of Wrestling, one of those shows, and I think he was on it. I think he was on one of those roundtables, yeah. So anyway, whether it's one of those or whether it's a match or a promo, any fond memories of Dusty Rhodes that you have?
I definitely have to say, when he won the NWA title at the Great American Bash in '86, I mean, of course, it wasn't a lot to really stretch my sentiment, but just got that culmination of arguably one of the greatest rivalries of all time, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. And, you know, after being screwed at Starrcade 85, at Starrcade 86, and, you know, he finally gets to the Bash, wins it all. I mean, it was a great moment for Dusty Rhodes, a great moment for professional wrestling. I'd say that might be his prize moment. His third WWE Championship, his final NWA Championship, and it was Ric Flair, also one of the greatest of all time. So I'd say that would probably be if I could be there for any famous Dusty moment, it would probably be at the Great American Bash in 1986.
And final question for you, what were your thoughts on the tribute done to Dusty Rhodes, both in Money in the Bank and on Raw, as well as the documentary that was done for him? If you had a chance to see it, I know it was only last night. I just got done watching it like 10 minutes ago. But what were your thoughts on the tributes to Dusty Rhodes?
I did watch that tribute last night. I thought it was very well put together. They pulled a lot of content from his DVD, which is on demand on the WWE Network. So I advise you go watch it if you haven't seen it. But I mean, it was really touching. It was I didn't think I was going to get emotional. I mean, when I watched Money in the Bank and they did the video package for him, and when they tolled the bell, I was stern, but I wasn't emotional. But when they actually played the video package to the song by Philip Phillips, "Raging Fire," I mean that I started to get emotional definitely there, especially going back to when they showed clips of his first NWA Championship win, where he's in the locker room and his face is all bloody, and he goes, "I'm now at the top of the mountain. It's going to take a hell of a man to knock me down." I definitely got emotional there, and especially when the video package ended, and he was in the middle of the ring at the Performance Center, and then he said, "Happy trails to you until we meet again," right before it ended. I definitely got emotional there. So that video package I thought was very well put together. Had a great song for Dusty, and I think that they encapsulated what he was all about very well. Not only in the documentary, but in that very well put together video package. It was one of the most charismatic performers of all time, probably the most charismatic performers of all time, the greatest talker of all time, and I think they really put Dusty's legacy together well. And if you can only do it in 2 or 3 minutes, in his entire career, if you can only shorten it up in 2 or 3 minutes, I think they did that with that video package. So Dusty will be missed, Glenn. I tweeted this this morning. I'll never forget Dusty Rhodes, and I imagine no one will ever forget Dusty Rhodes. That's how much he means to a lot of people.
Absolutely. I felt that video package. I mean, WWE's production team is second to none when it comes to like tributes and anything. I mean, when you look at promos, but especially when they do video packages for people that passed, whether it was him, whether it was Dusty or Warrior or Mae Young, Paul Bearer, Savage, the list goes on and on and on. They're just amazing when it comes to that kind of stuff. But a tremendous tribute to Dusty Rhodes from last night. The tribute was great. The bell toll, like you said, was very well done. The crowd is very respectful. But absolutely one of the most inspirational and influential talents, not only in professional wrestling from the past and the present, but as you mentioned, when he was standing at the Performance Center. Because, you know, it's one of those things, because I know we talked about, I don't know if I talked to you afterwards or before, or I might have just mentioned you in a tweet or something, when Vern Gagne passed, a couple months ago. Yeah. That's a huge thing, one of the innovators, one of the biggest originators in wrestling, but he wasn't just on TV. We weren't just watching him in the E60 special a couple weeks ago, or in the Legends of Wrestling thing, like I talked about before. Yeah. So, it's crazy. But
I don't want to minimize what Vern Gagne has done for this business.
Yeah, exactly.
A true pioneer of this industry. It's just, like you said, we don't see him every day on WWE television. Like he gets little for WWE, period, other than his initial contribution, which is growing all these stars over in the AWA and then, sending them off to Vince. But after that, once the AWA closed its doors, Vern Gagne wasn't around too much. And Dusty, although he was in WCW for the entirety of the 90s, when he finally came back to WWE, he was a good man. He was a good soldier for Vince. He was, down there scouting talent, perfecting them, molding all the young guys. So Dusty really touches close to home after the passing of Dusty Rhodes. It affected so many people. It really did.
Exactly, and he's also been on TV pretty much, not consistently, but he's been on TV quite a bit since we started watching the last 10 years or so it's been pretty crazy, just to see him pass immediately. And, of course, and also involved in the documentary, the last 10 minutes or so, I think they get a lot of quotes from the guys down at NXT. Like I said, he played a big part in that NXT, the E60 thing. He was also at the end of the table, and they were doing the creative meetings and stuff, but they got a lot of quotes for, they got one from Charlotte, who botched that tweet, like you clarified last week.
That's not the right. I mean, I know she meant well. And she seemed actually in the documentary last night. Her quote. She seemed probably maybe the most emotional of all the people. I mean, she was sobbing, and I know she meant well. But it's slept in alleys and dined on pork and beans, Charlotte. But I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you.
Yeah. You had quotes from Charlotte. You had Adam Rose. They had Seth Rollins, who played a big part in his career. Kevin Owens as well. He had a lot of cool words to say about Dusty on Twitter and as well in that documentary.
I don't know why I thought this. I wasn't going to say anything. I might have said something to you, but Eva Marie, her quote seemed very generic. Like, honestly, like you could have gotten me in there, because what she said is about the same thing that Dusty Rhodes did for me. Like, she said, I'll quote her right now. She said, he welcomed me with open arms, and he was a true inspiration. I mean, everyone had like these anecdotes and these personal stories about him, and she just said really what anyone who's ever met Dusty Rhodes could say. I wasn't sure why. I mean, it didn't seem like she had a really big connection. Or maybe she did, and they just didn't portray it well in the video package. But I found that a little confusing.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing when they showed everybody, even Seth Rollins. Like, not everyone's going to be breaking down crying or anything like that, but and like you said, Eva Marie is not the most, I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but not emotional person, but she doesn't very, her range of emotions is not all that good when it even comes to a standard promo. Like, I don't mind Eva Marie. She's getting better in the ring, but she's like a piece of cardboard when it comes to personality, so maybe that's just the way that she portrayed it, but it just seemed very generic. But all the other quotes are very well done, though. Like I said, Seth Rollins and a number of others as well that he played a huge part. What was that?
Greg?
No, I can hear you.
They got Kevin Owens in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kevin Owens as well. Yep. I was hoping they would get a quote from like Sami Zayn or something like that, but I was hoping. We'll talk about this in a second too. And I'm actually not really that surprised. But also generic quotes they had. Not on the documentary, but I'm going off track here, but who was it? Cody's wife, Brandy, or Eden, she put something up on Instagram about it after he passed, I think on Thursday or Friday. It was weird. It kind of like wrote like an obituary. It was like, he died with his family, we love you. Or it was something very short. It was weird, but there was that. And then, she wasn't in the documentary. Cody and Dustin, I mean, obviously they showed highlights of the Hall of Fame sermon. I don't expect them to be in it. They put it together on Friday. They're probably still at home, arranging the funeral, which I believe is tomorrow. Yeah. But that gets to my next point, which I forgot to ask you about. What are your thoughts on bringing back Cody Rhodes? I know we were very vocal about this when we talked about this last week on the phone when I broke the news to you. How do you think they should handle Cody Rhodes, Stardust, whatever, going forward?
Well, I can't imagine how they could possibly bring him back out in the yellow and black tights. I mean, I know it's not really a case. Dusty's death isn't, a storyline or anything, but I don't see how, after something as monumental or tragic, really, that happened to Dusty, they could kind of. It's not. I don't think Stardust is a rib to Cody. I think that he really wanted to, do his best and to kind of take after his brother Goldust. Goldust really ran with the character and made it his own and made it phenomenal, really. I think Stardust wanted a similar challenge. Everyone knows that Cody Rhodes is, a phenomenal worker. Could have been, still potentially could be a future world champion. I think that Stardust kind of wanted to take on the challenge of, getting this weird gimmick but actually making it work. And unfortunately, he hasn't made it work. I won't say that he can't make it work, but it's just with what he was given, I don't think it really helped his talents, or it showed off his talents in the ring. But regardless, I think that after something as tragic as the death of Dusty Rhodes, I think that there's no choice but to bring Cody Rhodes back. I mean, in a more serious, competitive light. I mean, there's Stardust. I won't completely poop on him. I mean, Stardust was entertaining. A little, but Cody Rhodes was just head and shoulders above the character Stardust. I mean, there's little to hate about it. I mean, maybe if you go back in hindsight and see that, well, we got 3 new stars in the Shield, and we don't want to set Cody up right yet, so we'll give him a little gimmick with Stardust, so just to keep him busy. Maybe if that was what they were going for, sure. But I think now more than ever, it's time to not only put him in the spotlight, but put him in the spotlight back as Cody Rhodes.
I commend Cody Rhodes for at least trying to make the gimmick work. I mean, this is not the first time something like this has happened. I mean, I thought the Stardust gimmick was the worst thing he's done in his career. Not because of his own talent or of his own effort. It's because just the way they booked him. But, the mustache thing, when he was wearing the mask a couple years ago, it's not the first time he's been saddled with a terrible gimmick. He makes it work to the best of his ability, so I commend him. But, and I said this years ago when he was being wasted during the whole Rhodes Scholar scene, that was great and all, but there have been various points during the feud with Big Show after he lost the title where, I'm thinking this guy's a future world champion. You have to capitalize on his potential right now, and people are saying, he's still young. It's okay. He's in his late 20s, but he's not going to get any younger. The guy's, I think he turned 30 this year, or will be turning 30 or 31, something along those lines. So they got to capitalize right now. And I'm not saying, I did say this to you that, give the guy the world title right now. He deserves it. I'm not saying you need to give him the Rey Mysterio, Eddie's treatment from 10 years ago. You don't need to do that. But even though he deserves it, maybe in due time, I'm not saying you need to do that ASAP. But, this is not my idea. I saw someone else say this, and I thought it was excellent. I heard someone else say this. Maybe not as of last night, because it's still too soon. Cena wasn't even on the show. But at some point down the line, if Kevin Owens doesn't take that title, you could have Cody Rhodes come out, accept that open challenge, and win that championship from a big name like John Cena, get a huge win, and win that title, win the same title that his dad made famous. So what do you think of that idea?
Yeah. That sounds great. It really does. Cody as the U.S. champ. But honestly, I've known this from as soon as the kid put knee pads on and finally got rid of those weird shin pads. I remember that, I think it was Royal Rumble 2012. He finally got the knee pads going. The kid was a star. He really was. He had a great look. He's great in the ring, great on the mic. I honestly, especially after this, I want nothing less than for Cody to be a world champion one day. I sincerely mean that. You can go back to World Class Championship Wrestling down in Texas after the passing of David Von Erich. Kerry Von Erich went on to face Ric Flair for the NWA Championship in Texas Stadium, and he ended up beating Ric Flair for the NWA Championship. And I'm sure that wasn't in the plans of NWA, but since David Von Erich, who meant so much to a lot of people as Dusty did, since he passed away, David was going to be an NWA champion for those of you that don't know. Since he passed away, they gave the title to Kerry Von Erich in his memory and David's memory. So I think that they should do something like that with Cody. I'm sure that Cody Rhodes was never in the world title plans. We have Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar going at it at Battleground. I don't know if this is confirmed, I might be behind, but I saw a poster for SummerSlam that showed Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar on the poster. I'm not sure if that's confirmed, but I doubt Cody Rhodes is anywhere in the immediate, world title booking for 2015, but I think it's necessary that you give him a world title shot. At least give him a great match with the world champion. Put him back in that main event role. I mean, he was never really in the main event role, but he was always a main event caliber worker. So I mean, give him Cody Rhodes back. Let him be a main event star. You don't have to give him the title, but I mean, if Dusty meant that much to you, it does. Addressing WWE corporate, if Dusty meant that much to you, it shouldn't be that hard to give Cody Rhodes a push.
I'm just baffled that in the many years that he's been in Money in the Bank, at least 3 or 4 times he's been in Money in the Bank, that he's yet to win it. I know like Kofi Kingston's been in like 10 of them and he's never won one, but the biggest difference between a Kofi Kingston and a Cody Rhodes is that I could definitely see Cody Rhodes being a future world champion. Like you said, I had that exact same thought. When he put on those knee pads and he was wearing that, he had the white tights and he had the white Intercontinental Championship around his waist to go to match it. It was perfect. Like the guy screamed future world champion and they just screwed it up somewhere along the way. So I think now is the time to start booking him as that main event talent, as he should be. And I hate the arguments that he's not over as himself. He always needs a gimmick to fall back on. I dare anyone to go back in the network, because it's on the network, to Money in the Bank 2013, when he was ascending that ladder. I think it was Philadelphia, one of the best crowds in wrestling history, or at least recently, but he was ascending that crowd, he was ascending that ladder. The crowd was going crazy for him. They weren't chanting mustache, they weren't chanting Stardust, they weren't chanting Mask or whatever. They were chanting Cody, and they loved him. The summer of 2013 was his year. And I was watching it like the day that Dusty passed away a couple days ago. The match that he had at Battleground with Goldust and The Shield, one of my favorite matches of that year, and it was so great to see those guys have their moment. But he was so over, and I don't know where they lost it. But like you said, they gave him that competitive matchup that year. I think Orton was the champion at that time when he was the WWE champion, and that was when he got fired. I think it was. So they have done something like that before, and I think love the idea. I mean, the U.S. Championship run would be great. But if he's not in the immediate plans to become world champion at any point in the near future, but now is the time to start capitalizing on it and give him that world championship run that he deserves. If only. No, go ahead.
I see the argument that potentially he's not over enough for a world championship status. I can see someone making that argument. But Vince McMahon likes how he can get a broomstick over in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
So if you can get a broomstick over, you can definitely get Cody Rhodes over 100%.
Yeah, well, I think it's more the fact, more the argument that people make is that not only that is he not over, because he has been over before. I don't think right now he's not over. When you lose to R-Truth on a pre-show, of course you're not going to be over. Just ask Wade Barrett. But, with him, the guy's got all the tools. That's the thing. I think that's what separates him from all the other mid-card talent right now. He's got the look. He's got the mic skills. He's come so far on the mic. And then in the ring, the guy's a natural. So I really don't see any reason why he at least shouldn't be in consideration to be a future world champion or in contention for that title. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But hopefully, like I said, hopefully they give him some time off. When he comes back, he can win that championship in honor of Dusty and remembrance of him as a tribute to his father, especially with Father's Day being this Sunday, so terrible timing. But like we said before, RIP Dusty Rhodes, one of the greatest of all times. And like we said, we were able to meet him. You were able to get a picture with him 5 years ago at Northeast Wrestling, an incredible experience. And you guys can read all about it in the latest edition of John's Jargon at nextEraWrestling.net. So, John, any final thoughts before I let you go?
I just want to say that we'll never forget the dream, the American dream, Dusty Rhodes. He'll live in our hearts and our minds forever.
You got it, brother. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Rest in peace, Dusty.
Awesome talking to John, as always. You can follow him on Twitter at _John's Jargon. And as I mentioned in my conversation with him, you can check out his latest John's Jargon edition on nextEraWrestling.net, remembering the late, great Dusty Rhodes. From there, we get into our Money in the Bank review for the first time ever here on the show. Bleacher Report featured columnist Ryan Dilbert.
Hello?
Hey, Ryan, it's Graham.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Doing good. How about you?
Good.
Well, first and foremost, before we get started here, for anyone familiar with your work from Bleacher Report, where can the people find you and just kind of let you know, just kind of let the people a little bit about yourself?
I'm the lead writer for the WWE section. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Dilbert. Pretty simple, just my name. And I got stuff up every day, so you'll see my thoughts on all the happenings. all the time.
Perfect. Big fan of your work, but kicking it off here, Money in the Bank from this past Sunday night. Kicking off the show was the tribute to Dusty Rhodes. So before we get into any of the matches here, what were your thoughts on how WWE handled the tribute to the late great American Dream Dusty Rhodes?
Personally, I thought it was perfect. They always do these tributes really, really well, and I liked how they didn't just focus on his WWE stuff as a part of his career. You didn't see a lot of the polka dots. You saw the stuff with Flair. You saw some of his great promos. So it was more representative than you might have thought. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I love the fact that they had the video package, they had the 10-bell salute at the start of the show, so that was great to see as well. They've replayed that vignette on Monday Night Raw a number of times, the tribute or the documentary last night on the WWE Network, so I thought it was very well handled and a great way of kicking off the show and paying tribute to the Dream. And like you said, a great way of also incorporating his pre-WWE work from Florida Championship Wrestling, all the territories, some of his polka dot stuff, as you mentioned, some of his greatest in-ring matches and promos and whatnot, so I thought that was great as well. But on the kickoff show, we had King Barrett taking on R-Truth. R-Truth going over the King. He also beat him the subsequent night on Raw. Kind of a nothing match, but I want to get your thoughts on the match itself, if you have any. And WWE's use of King Barrett. I'm a huge Barrett fan. I think he can be really good for WWE if they can use him right. But I guess WWE doesn't tend to think so. So what were your thoughts on the match itself and the current use of Bad News Barrett, whatever, Wade Barrett in WWE?
Well, I think I'm with you in that, I foresee him doing so much more, being so much more, and he's continually, dropped to the side. And this, the pre-show match is a good example of that, where it seems like a joke, and it seems like a way to get R-Truth over, with no real direction for Barrett. And it's really surprising. You would think after winning King of the Ring that would get him going a little bit, but it hasn't done much for him at all.
It's very surprising. That's a thing, too, because like you said, he's been doing nothing for a while. I mean, he's had a lot of start and stop pushes dating back to the Nexus 5 years ago, whether it was the brawling thing, the Bad News thing, the King, whatever. Just nothing seems to work for him. I think he makes it work to the best of his ability. They just don't stay consistent with his push. He doesn't win enough matches. He's beating Ziggler one week, and then he's losing to R-Truth on a kickoff show. So it doesn't make any sense in how they're utilizing him right now. But one question for you in regards to Wade Barrett and Bad News Barrett, King Barrett, like I said, you can call him whatever you want. What do you think they need to do, or Barrett needs to do in order to be successful in WWE? Just strip himself of all the gimmicks, like just stop the King stuff. I know that's been successful in the past, but just, dating back to Sheamus as well, they never really did him any good. WWE's just booking of him wasn't really all that solid and consistent. So what do you think they need to do in order to get it right with Bad News Barrett, so they can, Barrett, in order to realize his full potential in WWE?
Really, maybe just sticking with something and being consistent, because like you said, he does well with what he's given, and when he was doing the Bad News thing from the podium and whatnot, that was going well, and he was managing to get the most out of that, and then you didn't see it anymore. And I don't know, just stick with something, let him work on it, let him connect with the crowd in some way. And give him some wins. That would be good too.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about just the wins too, and the gimmick itself. And as you mentioned, the Bad News Barrett thing, when they first started, I know it was like kind of a spin-off of whatever they were doing on the YouTube channel with the JBL and Cole show. I know he was on there for a while, but the thing is that really discourages me is that they give him these characters and he makes them work, like you said, much like Cody Rhodes and the Stardust stuff, the mustache, almost the exact same thing. But then when he starts to get it over, as you mentioned, he was going really well with it. He had the podium. It was over with the crowd. When you would hear, "I'm afraid I've got some bad news," the crowd would pop. And when he came back late last year, early this year, he was over. And then they just kind of killed him with the IC title run. and just losing all of these matches. And that's what's discouraging to me, that he's over with these characters, and then right when you think, he's gaining traction, maybe you turn him babyface, they just kind of just rip the rug right underneath him. And it's, I don't know, it's the same thing with Zack Ryder to an extent when they had him a couple years ago, same thing kind of, but yeah, it's sad to see, but hopefully they can kind of make a turnaround with Barrett at some point in the near future. Lost to R-Truth, like I said, the next night on Raw in 10 seconds, so kind of depressing, but hopefully they can just kind of, give him a character that he can stick with and just kind of stay consistent with his booking. But on the actual show, kicking off the show, was the Money in the Bank ladder match, pitting Roman Reigns, Dolph Ziggler, Neville, Kofi Kingston, Sheamus. We also had, I'm trying to think of the other combatants. Oh, Kane, as well as... Did I say Neville? I know we had Ziggler. Yep, Ziggler, Neville, Sheamus, Roman Reigns, Kane, Kofi Kingston, and who was the other guy? I can't remember for the life of me. Jeez, I can't remember. But they didn't win anyway, so that doesn't matter. But Sheamus came out victorious. The new Mr. Money in the Bank. Roman Reigns was the fan favorite going in. Got cost the contest by Bray Wyatt kicking off that feed. We got a little taste of that the next night on Raw. I'll talk about that in a minute. But Sheamus is the new Mr. Money in the Bank. Did not go over very well with the live audience or the people of the IWC online fans, whatever. A lot of people were very angry about Sheamus becoming the new Mr. Money in the Bank. So before I get my thoughts, I want to get what you thought of that about Sheamus's victory. What do you think about Sheamus as Mr. Money in the Bank? Do you think it's a good move?
I don't think they had a whole lot of options with that group. If you do Roman Reigns in that spot, I think people feel like it's too obvious and feels a bit forced. I didn't think they would go for Orton again too recently. Ziggler is, someone I would have liked to see, but that's just not a realistic option. They don't treat him on that level anymore. So I see where they're going with that. I like it from the perspective of I don't know where they're going to go with it. There might be some authority involvement, but with Reigns, it seems like, I know where this is going. He's going to go after Rollins. There's going to be a Shield element, but with Sheamus, it's a bit up in the air. So I'm open to it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, only time will tell. I mean, I was in the minority. I liked it. I'm not even a Sheamus fan. I just think that since he came back, the night after WrestleMania, he's been doing at least some of, or at least the best work of his career to date. I mean, even the pre-stuff, or before he became a babyface and he first came in, he wasn't booked very strongly. I know, so far, he's lost a few matches here and there, but the matches with Ziggler were great. He's got a new theme, got a new look. It's great. I'm really enjoying it, so I thought it was a well-deserved victory, and we don't know where it's going. Like you said, I think if anything about this, I know people didn't like it. They think Sheamus is boring. That's all well and good. But I think we can all appreciate the fact that no one really saw this coming. I know a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but I know there were a few people that maybe thought Sheamus was going to win over Roman Reigns, but it was not the, he was not the popular candidate. That was Roman Reigns, and that was kind of the predictable route. They were foreshadowing it. He was the focus of the program for, the weeks going into the pay-per-view. So it's something a lot of people didn't see coming. I thought it was a nice swerve. It's not the worst choice they could have gone with. It wasn't the best choice, like you said. Dolph Ziggler was in there, but I feel like, he's the guy that's already had the briefcase. They could be doing more with him, but he's another guy that could have won. Kofi Kingston would have seemed a little random. Would have been cool, but it would have been a little random. Neville, it's too soon. There's I think of that crop of guys in that matchup, Sheamus was a good fit. No one really saw it coming. It was a great finish to the match. And as you mentioned, it could really go in a number of directions. The Authority is definitely an option. Some people I've been seeing, some people pitch the idea of him cashing in on Seth Rollins, and he joins the Authority, and Rollins goes babyface, kind of kicking off the highly rumored feud between Rollins and Triple H. I don't know if we can see that going into SummerSlam or WrestleMania or what, but there's a lot of different directions as to where they can go with it, and I'm interested to see where it goes. But what were your thoughts on the match itself, in which Sheamus won? Do you think it was one of the best Money in the Bank ladder matches of all time, one of the worst? What were your thoughts on it?
I had a lot less of the big spots than some of the other matches, but I think that it's fine. You want it to be more story than spots, and I felt like that was definitely the case with Kofi and Neville both had some real legitimate change. It looks like they were going to win. Some of the psychology was pretty good. Not the best of the bunch, but definitely enjoyable. And what about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a good match as well. I wouldn't call it like one of the best or anything like that, but as you mentioned, there weren't any crazy over-the-top spots, and it's not that there should have been. I definitely enjoyed the matchup, and I thought the outcome kind of made it worthwhile because no one really saw it coming. Had Roman Reigns won, maybe my enjoyment level of this matchup wouldn't have been as high, but yeah, I thought it was a good way of kicking out the show, and as you mentioned, just not as many crazy spots. Not that it's necessary, but Kingston and Kingston and Neville were the MVPs of this matchup, both faring very well, as a lot of people expected. Some cool spots, not a lot of memorable, spots about it, but it was still a good ladder match. In comparison to some of the other Money in the Bank ladder matches we've got in recent years, I know the one that Rollins won last year was amazing. The All-Stars one from 2 years ago. A couple of the other ones from recent years have been really, really good. So there's some tough competition. But you see the same match every year. You have the same competitors. There's only so much you can do. If it continues, maybe you scrap the matchup. I know there's a lot more you can do with that match, the Money in the Bank concept. I think it's only scratched the surface, but I think so far, the matchup this past Sunday was good and a nice way of kicking off the show. So from there, we go into the Divas Championship matchup. Nikki Bella defending against Paige. Pretty good matchup. I thought it was better than their triple threat match from Elimination Chamber. But in the end, it was Nikki Bella coming out victorious after some shenanigans, doing the whole twin magic thing. Brie revealed herself to be Brie, and then after showing the tattoos and unstuffing her bra, I thought that was pretty creative. A lot of people did not like it. I thought it was innovative, and then Nikki Bella came out victorious. Whether she got DQ'd or not, wouldn't matter. She would have retained the championship, nevertheless. So Nikki Bella is still the Divas champion. What were your thoughts on the matchup and the subsequent finish? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What were your thoughts on that?
The match itself is, small. They're taking small steps and letting the women go for a little longer, and they're just better quality matches from the women on the main roster. Not anything at the level of what the NXT women are doing, but I think we're going the right way there. As for the ending, it's just weird to me when the announcers are confused about the rules, and when they're confused, I feel confused. I thought there was a bit of a lack of logic there in terms of her not the Bella's not getting disqualified, and it would have had the same result. Nikki would have retained, so you could have done the same thing. Just if she's interfering, I think the ref needs to stop it. Otherwise, it just threw me off a little bit.
No, I definitely agree, and you make a great point in that if the commentators are confused, then so are the viewers, and they should be clear on the rules, and that was what kind of made the finish of the match a little bit convoluted, a little bit controversial, and not only with these kind of matches, but any match, I've seen it a number of times before. I don't know if it's supposed to be intentional or not, but I definitely agree in that.
It seems very recently they've been doing that a lot more, with Rollins and Orton, with the RKO being banned.
Exactly, yep.
They had no idea what's going on. They're supposed to be the guides to this world and say, okay, this is the story of the match. This is what's happening. But it's like they're taking us off of the story and going somewhere else for some reason.
Definitely. I feel like in that specific scenario as well, it's one thing to have like a heel be the voice of reason, but to not, and like kind of point out the flaws and make sense of everything, that's one thing. But then to have not one person of the three commentators behind the booth not make any sense of the finish whatsoever, it definitely leaves you confused and kind of a little bit mad at what you just saw. So I definitely agree, and hopefully that's something, like I said, maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but hopefully that's something they can change going forward. The state of commentary has been a little bit, you don't need me to say that, but it's been pretty bad for quite a while, so hopefully they can improve upon that. Just kind of nitpicking stuff there, but I do agree. And so Nikki Bella is still the Divas champion. The next night on Raw, they had a 2-on-1 handicap match, pinned Paige. Paige had a rah-rah thing behind the, backstage before the matchup, kind of recruiting divas. No one joined her, and that was pretty much it. A lot of people thought that, or myself included, thought that this would be the debut of a new woman from NXT, specifically either Charlotte or Sasha Banks. we didn't get that. Maybe next week. I'm holding out hope. But what are your thoughts on the future of the Divas division going forward? Do you feel like now is the time to start bringing up the NXT talent, whether it be one of the 4 horsewomen, Bayley, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, or Sasha Banks? Or what do you feel they need to do going forward to kind of change people's perception of the Divas?
I feel like a lot of the women have been ready for a long time. Sasha in particular. Charlotte can definitely do a lot for the division, but more than that, it's going to be a situation where Vince McMahon himself is going to have to change his philosophy. Like, women aren't just a snack. They can be the main course. When he's ready to do that, I think that's where the big change will come. Because they already have Paige, Naomi, Natalya, a lot of talent already. Just a matter of those women not getting consistent stories. Like, as soon as Naomi lost that triple threat, she's out of the picture completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't just have the champion and the challenger, and that's it for stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And we have the talent on the roster. It's not a lack of, they're not good wrestlers. Like you mentioned, we have Natalya, we have Naomi, we have Paige, Emma, Charlotte, all the women in NXT. The list goes on and on and on. And then
I have to say, I am one of the biggest critics of the Bellas, but Nikki has gotten a lot better, and she can put on a good match. So that, like I said, talent's not the issue there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a huge Bella fan either, but yeah, I can definitely agree with you there that they have improved a lot, especially Nikki. As a character, I feel like she could just stand alone. I never really understood why they put the Bellas back together. Maybe it was a marketing thing. I have no idea. But
they like twins. We've seen that. So
yeah, exactly. So maybe that's why. I don't know what the deal is with her. I know on Total Divas they were kind of teasing that one of them was going to be leaving, or maybe both of them. We'll find out in a couple weeks, on the return of Total Divas. I have no idea, but maybe that's just her thing. I know they talked about at one point that's a lot more marketable. That the both of them together, the Bella Twins, are a much bigger name than just Nikki alone. But I feel like in 2015, Nikki can be a big name on her own, considering not only that because she's in a relationship with John Cena, but she has come a long way as a character. She sells merch, the Fearless stuff, whatever. So I feel like she can stand alone, and they only tested the waters with it for only a couple of months, for a couple of weeks even last year, before they just completely, just botched the whole storyline and they just put them back together. Not that it was a good storyline to begin with, but that never really made much sense. But I do agree, though, it's not the talent, it's more so just the booking. It's one thing, I hate to go back to the booking and the creative team, but just simple things like character development. Like you said, you have Naomi, who turns heel. She's, one of the highlights of the program for the women for a couple of weeks. Pairs up with Tamina, and then she's completely off TV. And then you don't see any of her for like 2 weeks until last night. And then you have people that you don't know if Nikki's supposed to be a babyface. Is she a heel? Am I supposed to like Paige? Like, there's no real. Summer Rae was a heel and a tween. It doesn't make any sense, So
they just have just been going back and forth with that. That's been driving me nuts. Especially with Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's going up against Naomi, so now she's a babyface with no explanation, no motivation, no basic wrestling character progress. So the issue, like you said, it's all over the place. A lot of fixes.
Exactly, and it's not, rocket science or anything like that. And I know you don't even have to be a wrestling mind. You don't have to have a mind for the business to figure that kind of stuff out. People writing these shows, I believe most of the creative writers, I'm sure there's a lot of talented guys on there, but a lot of these people that they hire write for TV, and that's, basic storyline stuff. That's, just basic storytelling 101 is that you have character development, a protagonist and an antagonist, and they keep on switching back and forth, and people just stop caring. I thought they had a good match on Sunday. They had a decent match last night on Raw, but people just sit on their hands because they really have no incentive to cheer for either woman. It's just basic stuff. So hopefully, Triple H, he's doing a great job with the women down in NXT. Hopefully he can kind of take the reins of the women on the main roster and hopefully kind of change people's perception of them going forward. But going forward here, we have our next matchup for the Intercontinental Championship. We won't spend too long on this, but Big Show against Ryback. Ryback retains via disqualification after The Miz interferes and gets Ryback disqualified, so Big Show wins, but not the title. So match only lasted a few minutes and led to the whole thing the next night with Miz beating Big Show via countout. Looks like we're heading in a triple threat. That's the direction we're heading in for the next pay-per-view at Battleground for that IC title. So what were your thoughts on Big Show versus Ryback?
The whole thing feels like a transitional thing. Like, I don't know if I'm really supposed to care. This is just his first big test for Ryback, and I don't want it to go on very long. I think that's generally a lot of people are thinking, and it seems like they're trying to protect both of them by having the short match and then adding The Miz, because a longer match with the two of them will be a bit hard to digest.
Yeah, I don't know how they would fare against each other if they gave them 10 or 15 minutes. I like Ryback. I don't know how good of a chemistry, how good a chemistry he could have with Big Show. The match wasn't bad. It only lasted a few minutes, which is probably for the better. I enjoyed the stuff the next night with Miz going over in his hometown. He was going crazy. Like, he's a really good character. Ryback's come a long way. Big Show, not a huge Big Show fan, but at least he's not in the main event. At least he's not facing Roman Reigns, so that's a step in the right direction. It's something new, too. We haven't seen him versus Ryback before, so I'm fine with it. But, they can make it work. I didn't really care for the matchup all too much. Ryback, it would have been asinine to take the title off of him this soon. So I'm glad they're going in the direction of the triple threat. Nothing I'm too invested in, but, for right now, it's something for him to do. Like you said, a big test for him coming right out of the gate as Intercontinental Champion. Keeps him busy. He's not losing non-title matches like Barrett was, so that's something too. So I'm enjoying it for what it is, and hopefully it can only get better as the weeks move forward. So up next, we have what a lot of people are calling the match of the night, and I absolutely have to agree. Champion versus champion. Number 2, the rematch, John Cena versus Kevin Owens. Another gem of a match between these two. John Cena ultimately goes over after 3 attitude adjustments after the contest, showing respect to Kevin Owens, looking to shake his hand. Owens declines, delivers a pop-up powerbomb on the apron, as we've seen many times before in NXT, to Neville, Alex Riley, Sami Zayn. The list goes on. And that was it. John Cena was not on Raw on Monday night, and Kevin Owens had a great match against Dolph Ziggler on that show. So what are your thoughts on John Cena versus Kevin Owens, the match, the feud, and where you see it going from here?
Definitely one of the best matches of the year. And I guess we'll talk more about it later, but the latter match at the end of the night, to me, was better for a few reasons. But this feud is kind of reignited a passion in a way, in that it appeals to this indie style. There's so many of these moves that you see on the indie circuit mixed with this WWE style that Cena uses, and I like that they're protecting Owens. I mean, I would have loved to see him win, but they made his loss, as good a loss as you can get, and then he ends it with putting Cena on the shelf. So they're definitely high on him, which I'm happy about.
And I feel like this feud, I do agree with you there that Kevin Owens should have gone over in that. I mean, I'm not going to complain. I thought the match was great. The post-match attack kept heat on Kevin Owens. John Cena wasn't on Raw the next night, so they booked this guy as strongly as possible. And I realized he kicked out of 2 attitude adjustments, so he was made to look very, very good in defeat. So I'm not complaining about that at all. But with the outcome, I feel like, and I was saying this going into the show, that this should have been the one feud, the one guy that John Cena couldn't have beaten. He couldn't beat. I keep on losing to this guy. I went 0-2 against him. Even if, Kevin Owens won via disqualification, Cena was punching him in the corner. A lot of people may have booed that finish. Sure, it might have been a lame finish, but it would have kept Kevin Owens undefeated. And it's not the fact that, you need to build up another Goldberg streak with this guy, but I feel like his first win, it came in a huge match. I'm not denying that, but I feel like it could have came at a time later down the line where when John Cena finally beat him, it would have meant something. But like I said, maybe they have a bigger picture here. Kevin Owens mentioned the next night on Raw that he wants the U.S. title Why he wants it now and he didn't want it after he beat Cena the first time, I don't know. But maybe the end game is a U.S. title win for Owens, either at Battleground or at SummerSlam. So I ask you this, do you feel like the final rubber match, and we definitely are getting one, I mean, it's all but confirmed, do you think that goes down at either Battleground in a couple weeks, and I think in 5 weeks or so, or SummerSlam in August, and who do you see going over and ending the feud?
With Lesnar and Rollins at Battleground, I feel like you could definitely save Owens and Cena 3 for SummerSlam, and you can have more time to build. You can have Cena be injured longer, make it bigger. Especially if Owens is going to win, if he wins that third match at SummerSlam, it would be just a bigger feat. So I would definitely like to see that happen.
And you make a good point too, with Seth Rollins versus Lesnar happening at the next pay-per-view. There's honestly no need to have that match as soon as Battleground in a couple weeks, so they can't hold off on that. So I'd be completely content with them holding it off until SummerSlam. And John Cena, I don't know if they'll keep him off TV for 5 weeks. I would hope so. I mean, in a perfect booking world, we would keep him off TV. I don't see that happening, unfortunately. He only sold the Lesnar attack from SummerSlam for 8 days, and he came back, all well and good, showing no signs of war or anything like that. He just kind of came back, and he was completely fine. So I expect the same thing to happen next week, unfortunately. But in a perfect world, I also would keep him off TV for a while, sell the injury, come back the night after Battleground, and start building to that one match at SummerSlam, the rubber match, and hopefully that's where Owens goes over and wins the championship. So moving right along here for the WWE Tag Team titles, the Primetime Players beating the New Day in shocking fashion to win the gold. Once again, a lot of people split on this. Do you think it was time for the New Day to drop the gold to the Primetime Players? Was it a well-deserved victory? Or do you feel like the wrong people went over in this matchup?
I generally prefer just really long reigns, just so that people have a chance to establish themselves and create their stories for longer. In the New Day, it sure didn't feel like they held those titles for long. And the Primetime Players, I'm actually big fans of theirs, but this moment could have been a lot bigger if there had been more to it beforehand. It just felt like a big surprise with no meat to it.
And that's the thing, too. I feel like they need to kind of extend their feuds. And like you said, I mean, they've been feuding a little bit since Elimination Chamber, since Primetime Players were the last men standing in that matchup. And I, too, am a huge Primetime Players fan, so I was happy to see them win the gold. But it would have meant more with more of a build, as you mentioned, with more meaning, with more of a story behind it. So I'm glad they're champions. And as you mentioned, too, I'm also a huge fan of long reigns. And it just feels like with the tag team division, we have a lot of great teams. We have, the Usos are going to be back in a couple months. You have the Players, you have the New Day, you have the Lucha Dragons, Cesaro and Kid, hopefully, when they come back in a couple months. Harper and Rowan, a lot of great tag teams. But of all these tandems, they need to find one team they can build that entire division around. And it looked like they were doing that. I mean, they did that for a while with the Usos last year. But then going into the new year, it always seems like they keep on changing those titles every other month. It goes from Golden Stardust to Miz and Mizdow, the Usos, Cesaro and Kid, the New Day, Primetime Players. Every other month, we have a new set of tag team champions crowned, to the point where it's just getting ridiculous. So I'm hoping that, once again, it feels like this might be a transitional period for the tag team titles once again, so they can get the belts on Harper and Rowan, which is fine. At least the Primetime Players get a one-off reign with the titles. They deserved it. It's been a long time coming. But I do agree as well that the New Day were a great, they're a very entertaining act. They're not damaged by this, but it would have been nice if they got a long reign and kind of added more credibility to those tag team championships, because they have not really been holding on to them for that long until they dropped them on Sunday. So hopefully
they were just gaining momentum with their characters. They were just getting so good at it, and a big part of their character is these over celebrations of their small wins. So when they're champions, it makes more sense for them they have more chances to do that. The pissed off version, we'll see how that goes. But to me, like the gleeful, in your face, we're champions is the best role for them. But we'll have to see.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like, when they won those tag team titles 2 months ago and they were drinking the milk backstage and whatever, and I think it might have been Payback, or I think Xavier would spit out the milk or whatever when he was told that they had to defend the titles inside the Elimination Chamber. I think it was a Payback. And, those guys are great. And it's amazing to see how far they've come in the last 8 months. These guys were one of the worst things on TV as baby faces, and a complete turnaround. They finally flipped the switch. And, a lot of people, myself included, were hoping for a more aggressive a more aggressive side. And maybe they'll show it now that they're not champions, as you mentioned. They might be more pissed off. We'll have to wait and see. But, not even... Yeah, we'll see. And definitely at some point. And, I was thinking, people were asking as to whether, if they're heels, could they keep the same gimmick? And I thought it'd be the death of them. But like you mentioned, they're really coming into their own. They're really finally starting to pick up some momentum, and I think it's great. And hopefully they can continue to hone their characters and, get that TV time and continue to be on that roll despite not being tag team champions. So hopefully this is not the end of their little mini push in the tag team division. So we get to the main event, as you mentioned, which was your favorite match of the night, so I want to get your thoughts on that. Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose in a ladder match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Another great match from these two, another classic outing. Rollins comes out on top, still the WWE World Heavyweight Champion, but not without controversy. Both guys were holding onto the belt. Rollins, in the end, got the possession of the championship, still the champion, a bit confusing. Wasn't really all that necessary, but it is what it is, the right result. Rollins is still the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So I want to get your thoughts as to why you thought this was your favorite match of the night, and just the outcome as well. Do you feel like that controversial, questionable finish was the right way to go with this?
I didn't realize how much people had issue with that finish until kind of afterwards. I was looking on Twitter. I was actually kind of surprised because to me that was like showing just how close this was between these guys, like inches away. It's sort of like in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Not a couple. This is like a long time ago now. When the Titans were like a foot away from scoring a touchdown. To me, it was a similar thing where Ambrose is as close as you can get to winning it, and I just loved how they made both guys look so good. Like Ambrose looked almost superhuman, just taking so much punishment but still coming up, and he looked like the ultimate gutsy babyface. And this is the most vicious and calculating that I've seen Rollins be as champion. So to me, it was like the perfect roles for both men, feeding on this long rivalry that is filled with so much great chemistry. And the ladder spots weren't as much just big kind of stunts. They were part of the story and a way to showcase just how dangerous Rollins was.
And you said it right there, the story. And I feel like, this matchup may not have been as exciting for some people as some of their past outings, but I feel like where this matchup succeeded or superseded some of their past outings was their story. And the story they told with Ambrose taking an unreal amount of punishment, coming back from the 3 power bombs at ringside, still climbing up the ladder. And even though with the holding of the championship at the same time, almost becoming a draw. It would have been fine if Rollins just came out and just, did the 3 power bombs, ascended the ladder, and won the championship or retained it. That would have been fine too, but, as long as Rollins retained, they didn't do a draw or vacated the title, made it abeyant again, or whatever, stupid term they want to use, so at least it wasn't along those lines. But I think the highlight of this match was something we didn't even see at all, was that interference from the Authority, which was kind of teased. I know they said there wouldn't be any interference from the Authority, but you never know at this company as to whether they're going to deliver or not. So thankfully we saw, like you said, Ambrose looked very good in defeat, but Rollins coming out on top without any help from the Authority whatsoever. Maybe that, plays into that eventual Triple H turn or the Triple H feud of Seth Rollins, a split from the Authority, whatever. But it's great to see, that he's a great wormy heel like Edge was about 10 years ago or so. One of the best heels we've seen in a while, along with Kevin Owens. But, he's that squirmy heel. You just want to see him just get his ass kicked. But when all is said and done, he can get the job done on his own, and it's great to see. So I absolutely...
think that's what he was missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to see him be, a chicken shit. You want to see him be this slippery guy, but like when he's in the corner, he's got to bite back. And I always think back to Ric Flair when Ric Flair was doing that role in NWA and WCW. Like he would duck out of all this stuff, but like in the end, he would leave you limping. And that's exactly what Rollins did.
Exactly. They got to find a happy medium with the character, and I think they finally have. And that he can inflict an unreal amount of punishment, still win his matches on his own, yet still get that, elicit hate from the WWE universe, or get that help every once in a while if he needs it. But when he doesn't need it, he can just, win on his own. He can establish his own identity and come out looking strong. So I think they finally captured the true essence of what the Seth Rollins character can and should be. So that was great to see and made for a very enjoyable way of going off the show. So on the whole, what were your thoughts on the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and what do you think you would rate it out of 10?
To me, just right below WrestleMania in terms of events of the year. There's a lot of the mid-card stuff wasn't great, but the good matches were really, really good. Owens versus Cena, Rollins versus Ambrose, and the Money in the Bank, all really, really good. So I'm not used to putting a number on there. Maybe 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5. Really enjoyed it, but it's one of those things where I'm loving what I'm seeing, I'm feeling it, and I look on the internet and I see people just bashing things, and it makes me wonder what it takes to please some fans. If you don't enjoy that show, what are you waiting for?
Exactly, and I feel like I don't want to go back to like the whole Attitude Era thing. It's not going to be the Attitude again. I think right now, for what it is and it's in its own entity compared to recent years, I feel like the programming that we've been getting consistently overall since WrestleMania has been some of the best stuff that we've seen in quite a while. There's so much to look forward to right now. We have a lot of great champions, a lot of fresh blood, including Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, all the Shield members, Kevin Owens, Neville, the Lucha Dragons, the women too, and in some respect. There's a lot of great stuff to look forward to right now. And it's hard. I mean, like you said, I think it's up there with one of the best shows of the year. And, I mean, it's hard for me to say that, too, not because the show is bad. I actually really enjoyed this show, but there's been so many other great shows that it's hard to rank them from, like, best to worst. Even the Rumble and Fastlane, that happened right before WrestleMania that people weren't all that thrilled with. In retrospect, the booking decisions made sense. They were good shows for the most part. Extreme Rules, Payback, Chamber, now Money in the Bank, they've all been great, and then WrestleMania is in a stratosphere of its own. But I agree. I think the programming right now is actually pretty damn good, but maybe that's just us. I don't know. And like you said, there's a lot of people. I saw some people bashing the pay-per-view. I saw a lot of people that thought it was good. A lot of back and forth. At least it wasn't unanimous hate. So it wasn't, completely across the board. People didn't like it. So it's good to see that at least there's some varying opinions. And I would definitely give the show 2 thumbs up. Out of 10, it's hard to say. Maybe a 7.5, maybe right under an 8 or an 8 itself. I thought it was a really good show. And as you mentioned, the undercard wasn't, phenomenal. It really wasn't all that memorable. I liked the tag team title change. The Money in the Bank I thought was good, and I thought the outcome a lot of people didn't like, but I thought that was, something. It was a nice swerve. The Dusty tribute, which you can or cannot really include a part of the show because that was above, just amazing. So you can't really include it in a review. But like you said, the top 2 matches, Cena and Owens in the main event, just exceeded expectations. Both were stellar matches and among the 2 best bouts of the year, so that kind of kicked into the next notch in terms of a great show. But before we go off the show, man, thanks for so much for coming on. I appreciate it. But before I let you go, as you mentioned before, where the people can find you on Twitter and on Bleacher Report, etc., etc.
My Twitter is at Ryan Dilbert, and that's a D, like the comic book character, not Gilbert. That's a Gilbert Grape. And I'm all over the WWE Bleacher Report page. Good majority of those pieces of mine, they're working pretty hard, especially during this really packed part of the calendar. It's been an event like every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. My wife has not been happy.
Nah, I feel you. But yeah, a lot of great writers on Bleacher Report. Like I said before, man, you do a lot of great work. Huge fan of your articles over on Bleacher Report and your tweets as well. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Dilbert. Once again, man, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man. Have a good one.
Many thanks to Ryan once again for coming on the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Dilbert. Follow all of his content on Bleacher Report. As I mentioned, great stuff. And once again, thanks to John at _John's Jargon for coming on, talking all about Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, here on today's show. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind of a week in the world of professional wrestling, from Money in the Bank to the Dusty Rhodes stuff. Just a crazy week in wrestling, a lot to talk about. So we went a couple minutes over time here today. But before we go off, just a few announcements. First off, next week, as I mentioned last week, will be the week that we aired the exclusive interview with former WWE star Brodus Clay, aka current TNA star Tyrus. We're talking all about his time in WWE NXT, the redemption season, who he actually cheated with to almost win the show, his current standing in TNA, the Brodus Clay character, what got it over, what the demise of it was, his botched heel turn, his thoughts on the Funkadactyls, where Naomi's currently going, all this other great stuff. It's an awesome 40-minute-ish conversation. I had him on the show last week. I talked to him over the phone. He's awesome. You're going to really enjoy the interview. So don't miss it. It's right here on the show next week, June 23rd. Also on June 23rd, that very same night, right after you're done listening to WrestleRant Radio, the show should be up in the afternoon because I'm only going to film like an open and a close, and that's pretty much it. So it should be up by the afternoon. Today's show went up a little bit late. But so I will not be reviewing Tough Enough here on the show. The first official episode, I did watch the behind-the-scenes episode from the WWE Network just from a few hours ago, because right before this goes up, I'm just filming this episode right now. So I was able to watch the Tough Enough episode on WWE Network, the behind-the-scenes stuff, the top 40, who got cut, who made the show, and whatnot. And I thought it was good, so go out of your way to check that out, as well as the Dusty Rhodes documentary, as I mentioned earlier on with John. That was great, really enjoyed that. So make sure to go out of your way to check out those two specials on the WWE Network, the behind-the-scenes special on Tough Enough, as well as the Dusty Rhodes documentary from Monday night. So as I mentioned before, folks, make sure to come back here next Tuesday. It's going to be dropping right here on the website, nextairwrestling.net, WrestleRant Radio, my exclusive interview with former WWE star, current TNA star, Tyrus, formerly known as Brodus Clay. It's an awesome interview. You're not going to want to miss it. My full thoughts on the season premiere of Tough Enough. I cannot wait for that show. Love Jericho. Love all the people on the show. Love Tough Enough. Like I said, I've been spending every single week for the last number of months watching all the episodes back from the season 5 from 2011. Freaking love that show, man. So make sure to check out that season 2 before you watch the new one. So no review of Tough Enough next week, but my thoughts on it. I'm currently planning on doing a video blog on it. Not this upcoming Friday, of course, but next Friday on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/C/Graham Matthews. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews and on Twitter at WrestleRant. Make sure to come back here to Next Air Wrestling every single day. Content is uploaded daily. We've got episodes, we've got live reviews of Monday Night Raw and full written reviews of SmackDown, Lucha Underground, NXT, Ring of Honor, TNA Impact Wrestling, NXT, like I said before, Superstars, Main Event, and everything else in between. You're not going to want to miss it. It's a great site. Thank you for visiting. Thank you for your support. You guys are awesome. Enough of my rambling, enough of my shameless plugs. Go on and have a great week. I'll catch you guys right back here next Tuesday for my sit-down interview with Brodus Clay, now known as Tyrus. Catch you guys then.